Hey guys, it's Cain here. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In a previous video I have shown you how to do console applications in Visual Studio. We have seen so far how to write on the console, how to get data from the console, and a little bit of manipulation of data as well. In this exercise I'm going to continue working on the console applications again, but this time I'm going to use the fundamental constructs such as if-else statement, loops, and also methods. Most of this information will be very familiar to you, as you have seen C++ or maybe another language before. So as I said in the previous video, a lot of that information is transferable here, and we're going to use that information. So in the first exercise I'm going to show you how to basically type a couple of variables. So you can get a full list on the internet if you are wondering the primitive data types. So basically most of the time I'm going to use a string and an integer. So in this exercise I'm going to show you how to write an if-else statement using C#. So you will realize that I can define variables inside the main method or even in the class if I want to, and as soon as I do that they are underlined. This means that the variables are declared but you haven't actually used them yet. So we're going to create a menu of options on the console for the user to see what to select. And what I'm gonna do in here is to type console write. I'm not gonna type system, because as I said in the previous video, the system is already there we actually imported it, so we don't have to use the system at the beginning of the console now. So I'm gonna use many options. So I'm gonna say 1 is equals to, let's just make a list of fruits basically. So I'm gonna say apples is the first one, and copy this line and put it underneath it, and the second line will be say pierced. And at the top I'm just gonna type console dot write line, and inside I'm just gonna type list of fruits or something and put the semicolon. Once I have done this, obviously I have to basically ask the user to select one of these choices. So I'm just gonna type write. This is, as you can see, very similar to how the console applications are handled in other languages. So we'll say choose one to eat, and I'm gonna put that in. So in the next one now we have to read this information. I'm gonna use the input one to read the information and type console dot read line, which will obviously read the entire line and put it inside the input string. Now this is an important bit. You can continue to evaluate the input as a string value, but since the user is expected to enter a number, a better idea is to convert it. So most of the data that you deal with read line, and also this is true for the visual programming components, they are actually string. So even though the user is entering 1 or 2, what you get is, in fact, because you read the entire line, is actually string. And currently this is useless to us, especially if you're gonna put some manipulation on the data. So what we need to do is to convert it. There are multiple ways to convert data, but probably one of the easiest way is to use the data type first and then type parse function, and then you put the value inside, which is the input, and from there onwards now you convert the value. So in here string value is actually converted to integer. Now when we have done this, we can go into writing our if-else statement, which is very straightforward. You just say number is equals to 1, and if it is 1, this represents actually apple. So I'm just going to type console right line. Oops. You wanted to eat apples. It's a nice idea to put \n at the beginning. And since this is only one line, I don't even have to put the curly brackets. Even if I remove this stuff in here, this application will work fine. And now that I know the second choice is basically peers, I can leave this as else and immediately type whatever console message I have, or just re-evaluate the condition. I would prefer to re-evaluate it because to me it's a better way of understanding which choice is selected, because in a real program you are obviously automatically assuming that the other choice is chosen, which is not always the case. So I'm gonna type you wanted to eat pears. So that's done, and what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna run it. Remember that your console applications should have a read key at the end so that we can freeze the screen, the splash screen problem, and we can see the outcome. So I'm gonna run this thing and we can see the list of fruits. 1 is apple, 2 is pears. So I'm gonna type 2 and it says you wanted to eat pears, and I can rerun this just by clicking on F5, and 1 is selected, and this time I wanted to eat apples. You can also put an else statement here and just tell the user that the choice they have selected is invalid. So let's just do that. \n invalid selection, rerun the program to do a valid selection. And now that I have done it, I'm going to run it again, and this time I'm going to type 3 instead of 1 or 2, and it says invalid selection, rerun the program to the valid selection. So as you can see from this layout, that the way that we handle if-else statements are exactly the same as in C++ and also in Java. The only statements are changing is that because you read an entire line, you have to somehow convert this to integer, which was not needed in the program, but especially if you're going to do a manipulation on the data, you will need this line. The other things are probably the syntax of how you display the data and how you manipulate it. So that's done for the if-else statements. I'm gonna show you on the next one a little bit more complicated stuff, which will include the regular loop structure. I'm gonna use the for loop, and also a new loop that you haven't probably seen before, which is called the Foreach loop. I will also use a method to display the Foreach loop, which I think will be quite handy to you. I also assume in this exercise that you are a little bit familiar about the concept of array, which means you keep the data together as a set, well, sort of like a set. So I'm going to use a string data type. Now, one of the things that you should know about C# is that the capital string and the lower case string are not the same. The lowercase string is basically representing a data type, where the uppercase one represents a class. So that's why their colors are, you can see, different. This is a class, and as you can see, it carries the same color, where the other one is a data type. So whenever you want to use the data type, you have to write the string all in lowercase letters. Now I'm going to move on and create my array, which is going to be fruits, and I'm just going to say new string. And within itself, I'm going to type a couple of fruits that I would like to use in this exercise. So let's just type a couple of them. So I'm going to put a quotation mark here, and type them up. So first fruit can be, let's say, banana, comma, another one, apple, comma, pears, comma, watermelon. Let's add one more, and grapes. Now we have enough fruits in our string array. As you can see, this is a string array, and from there I'm gonna show you how you can basically iterate the arrays inside through using C# in Visual Studio. So I'm gonna type write line, which I'm gonna use it for putting a title just for the aesthetic purposes. So this is gonna be like something like list of fruits with for loop. So 1, 2, 3, some stars there showing you how to basically list them. So I'm gonna put \n in here, and in the next part I'm gonna use the regular old for loop. So this is the one that you probably already know, and it's exactly the same as how you do it in C++ basically. So this is going to be integer I equals to 0, I less than the fruits, which is our array, and I'm going to use the array length, which means the maximum size of the array, whatever it is. It will find it automatically, the semicolon and I++. Now this is a regular for loop. Well, the I value starts from 0 because the first elements in the array represented as 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. But overall, you have 5 different items, which means that the length of the fruit is also 5. So you can type 5 in here automatically, which will do the same thing, but it's better to leave it at length because you can always go up and add more fruits and you don't have to touch this code in here. So I'm going to display each and every one of these fruits on the console with a write line, because I want a blank space after that, a new line, sorry, not blank space. So I'm going to put \n and leave some space and put the name of the fruits, which should be fruits, as the curly brackets and the I value. Now this will hopefully generate the list of fruits in here one by one being listed on the console. So I'm going to build the application and press on F5, and I can see the list of fruits, and every one of them, banana, apple, pears, watermelon and grapes, are all listed in here. So that's done. That's how we use the for loop and how we can define arrays. Now in C# you can do this thing multiple ways. You don't have to use the regular for loop. In fact, even these brackets are not needed, because inside the for loop we have only one line, which is the console write line, and you can rerun this application and it does exactly the same thing. So in the second way, I'm going to show you the for each loop. Now this part is probably new to you. I will also use a function to list the for each loop. So the first thing I'm going to do is to come in here and type my function, and I'm going to type it as static void, just as I had the main function. I'm going to type static void, and I'm going to type the name of the function that I'd like to use. Let's call it list of fruits. And inside I'm going to pass the string array, which is string data type, and then just going to call it fruits, curly brackets, and I put my function in here. All I have to do is I'm gonna copy this line, the list of fruits one in here, and list of fruits with for each loop. So the loop that I'm gonna use is different now. In this one I've used a regular for loop, and the new one, I'm gonna use the for each loop, which is gonna come into here to the list of fruits method. So I'm gonna type this in here, list of fruits, just to call the method. But if I use the brackets and the semicolon, it will give me an error because it is supposed to accept an array, which means you gotta copy paste the array value here so that the array value is read, and then this one jumps in here, does the operation, and comes back to the method and ends the program. So what we're gonna do here is to write the necessary statements to use the for each loop. For each loop is quite useful, particularly when you want to deal with objects or string data type and so forth. You can also use it with primitive data types, but it's usually not that needed, since there is not much difference in using a regular for loop and for each loop when the data type is primitive. But if you are using an object data type or a string data type, which is essentially an object, for each loop can be quite handy. It is also easier to understand, particularly when you deal with the text data. So I'm gonna type for each to use the for each loop, and I'm gonna type the data type that I want to use, which is string. This data type must be the same as the array that you use. And what I'm gonna do is I want to go over each fruit inside the fruits array. So inside the fruits array, I want to go into each fruit one by one. I'm gonna put the curly brackets here, and I want to type now the name of the each fruit. So console.write line, put line, the brackets again, and \n, some space, and we're gonna type each fruit now, just to display the fruits. So in the previous exercise, instead of the each fruit, you were using the I value 0 going up to the length plus, and you were trying to display whatever is there in the array with fruits I value. Where in here you just use the data type of the array, and then inside you try to iterate them, and that should be it. So whenever you call this function, it goes into here. From there you call it, it jumps into here, it does this operation, and then it comes back there, displays it, and be done with the program. Remember that just like the for loop, for each loop has only one line underneath it, so this is actually not that much needed. So you can actually remove the brackets. It's a nice idea to remove the curly brackets whenever you have only one line underneath them, because it might be easier for you to keep the code tidy. So I'm gonna build this solution first to see if I have any errors, and I didn't get any errors here, as you can see, and I'm gonna run this thing now. So you can press on F5 or just say start debugging, and in the first part it says, as you can see on the outcome, list of fruits with for loop, and list them in here, and then list of fruits with for each loop, which then lists them in here. So we have completed the exercise. I'm just gonna put \n here and show them a little bit more tidier. So that should be list of fruits, whatever being listed in here, and the same goes for the other one. Even this part is not needed because it leaves a space anyway. So I think you can remove it, but I'll just let it stay there. So what else can we do? We have used in this program the string array type, we have used the method, we also use for each loop. Let's just now for the last bit to list the fruits, the first one in the reverse order, and the second one, which is a for each loop, in the regular order. So I'm gonna say I value is equals to fruit length, and as long as the I value is greater than or equals to 0, minus minus I, or I minus minus, doesn't matter, which will then hopefully list the fruits themselves in a reverse order. So let's just try to build up the program and run it. Whoops, we have an error here. It says index was outside the bounds of the array. Now this is an error that you will probably have quite common when you are dealing with the array values. You are getting this error because the value that you are trying to reach is actually cannot go beyond the length of it. So whenever you want to have this, whenever you have this error, you have to check out the value that you are using. So in this case, our first value is the first value length, which is the length of the fruits, and we can go down to the first value, which is 0. So I should make this as long as this value, fruits length minus 1, and greater than 0, I minus minus. This should be this should show you 5, but in fact 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we don't have 5. We have 4 as the last value. So make sure of that. Fruits length minus 1 refers to value 0, and the first value will be this one is 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. So let's just try to build the solution again and run the application, and this time, as you can see, the program runs. So the first value we see grapes, watermelon, pears, apple, banana, which is in reverse order of what I entered in here, and the second part, which is the regular order. As you can see, banana, apple, pears, watermelon, and grapes. I think this is a good exercise to show you how things work in C# and how some things are a little bit different than C++, particularly such as the static keyword. This keyword represents that your method runs only from this class. So if you want to reach the method, you have to use the class name to refer it. It might not make too much sense right now, but don't worry about it. It's not something that we're gonna spend too much time to understand how class and object relationship work in this course, since that topic should be covered in another course. But basically what you need to understand is C# supports some very easily accessible ways, such as, you know, instead of going to overcomplicated fruits length minus 1, greater than 0, and so forth, you can actually use for each loop in the same way to show the fruits in a reverse order if you want. So for this video, I'm gonna stop in here. In the next one, I'm gonna introduce you some of the visual programming components using Windows Forms now. So I'm gonna stop basically doing the console applications and go into the visual components using Windows Forms. So thank you for watching the video, and take care of you guys. I'll see you in the next video.